Her hand lingered, just a second too long on his lower back. Just long enough for me to feel it. But I told myself not to overthink. I smiled, I played the part. The loving wife. The supportive spouse. I nodded when they talked about deadlines and client dinners. I laughed when she made little jokes that somehow only he seemed to understand. And when her hand grazed his arm for the third time that night, I sipped my wine and looked away. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, like you're watching a scene you're supposed to be in, but instead, you're on the outside, just observing. I was right there, across the table from them, and yet I felt invisible. The air felt heavier than it should have. My heart was pounding and I had no reason why. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Because the truth? The truth was sitting right in front of me. Smiling, laughing, looking at my husband like he belonged to her. And the worst part? He didn't pull away. He didn't notice my discomfort, didn't glance over to check on me. If anything, he looked more alive than I'd seen him in months. Like something inside him had been sparked again. And it wasn't because of me. That night haunted me. Not because of what happened, but because of what I felt. That tiny voice whispering in the back of my mind, something's not right. That ache in my chest when I caught them exchanging looks they thought I wouldn't notice. But I noticed. I felt it. And maybe, a part of me already knew that things would never be the same. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about the cracks we ignore, the signs we downplay, and the moment when everything we thought we could trust falls apart. So if you've ever questioned your reality, if you've ever felt like love was slipping through your fingers while everyone else told you it was all in your head, then stay with me. You're not alone. Subscribe now to uncover stories that pull back the curtain on love, betrayal, and everything in between. Because what happened next? You won't believe it. And neither did I. I'm 38. A wife, a mother of 2. On paper, it looks like I should be happy. I have the house, the kids, the man I married straight out of college. We've built a life together, 15 years of birthdays, first steps, school plays, mortgage payments, and late-night grocery runs. But you know what they don't tell you about time? It doesn't just age your face. It can age your love, too. Somewhere between diaper changes and late meetings, between soccer practice and quarterly reports, we lost us. My husband, Mark, is a corporate executive. He wears his title like armor. Always polished, always pressed, always thinking 10 steps ahead. But never here. Not really. He's one of those people who lives inside his phone, in a constant cycle of calls, emails, meetings. His attention is a currency I've learned to stop asking for, because the answer is always the same. I'm busy, babe. Our marriage? It used to be filled with sparks. I remember when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, when a simple look across the room could make me blush. When he used to see me. Now? Now, we pass each other in the hallway like coworkers in a silent office. We talk logistics. Who's picking up the kids? What's for dinner? Did you pay the gas bill? But intimacy? Connection? They've slowly slipped through the cracks. And I told myself that's just what happens after so many years. That real love is quiet. That distance is normal. That this empty routine was still something worth fighting for. But then, Sophie entered the picture. She was introduced to me at a company event. Small talk, handshakes, forced smiles. I remember thinking how young she seemed. Early 30s. Confident. Sharp. The kind of woman who knows the power of her presence and isn't afraid to use it. Her hair always done just right, nails always perfect. She spoke like she'd been through enough to be wise, but not enough to be jaded. You know the type. Sophie worked directly with Mark on several high-stakes projects. That's what he told me. She's efficient, he said. Knows how to handle pressure. What I noticed was how she laughed at everything he said, even when it wasn't funny. The way she looked at him when he spoke, eyes wide like she was hanging on every word. I used to look at him like that, too, back when I still believed he had something to say. At first, I brushed it off. Office dynamics, harmless banter. I mean, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She never crossed the line, at least not in ways I could point to. Just hints. Fleeting moments. A glance that lasted too long. A smile that curved differently when he walked into the room. Then came the texts. At first, they were professional, messages about meetings and timelines. But over time, they became more casual, personal. I'd hear his phone buzz at midnight and see her name flash across the screen. He always said it was urgent. "We're finalizing numbers," he'd say. Or, "She's stressed about the presentation." And again, I told myself not to be the jealous wife. I told myself to trust him. That he'd never stray. That I knew him. But what do you do when the person you love starts turning into someone you barely recognize? Our house is quiet. Too quiet. A beautiful prison of soft beige walls, matching furniture, and framed memories that no longer feel real. The kids are wonderful, bright, curious, full of energy, but even they've picked up on the tension. My daughter once asked me why Daddy never smiles anymore. I didn't know how to answer. I've learned to fill the silence with chores. I clean obsessively, fold laundry like it's sacred, cook dinners that go uneaten. And still, the distance grows. He comes home later, smiles less. His phone is always face down now. And Sophie? She started texting me too. Little things. Friendly gestures. "Loved seeing you at dinner. We should grab coffee sometime." Always warm, always cheerful, always too much. Like she was trying to weave herself into my life as well. She made me feel watched. Not in a flattering way, but in a way that made me question myself. My posture. My clothes. The bags under my eyes from sleepless nights. I started seeing myself through her eyes, and I didn't like what I saw. But still, I said nothing. Because if I said something, I'd have to admit it. That I was losing him. That I already had. And it was easier to pretend that everything was okay than to face the truth that a woman I barely knew, a woman who smiled too wide and laughed too hard at my husband's dry jokes, was slowly pulling him away from me. Not with force, but with presence, with attention, with the things I stopped giving him when I got too tired, too hurt, too invisible. And so I stayed quiet. I folded the laundry. I cooked the meals. I smiled for the kids. But inside, I was unraveling. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before something gave. Before I gave. Before this woman, this colleague, took things too far. And the part that still keeps me up at night? I think he let her. He didn't stop her. And maybe, he wanted her to cross that line. Because he knew I wouldn't. Not yet. But that was about to change. Drastically. And painfully. And what came next was nothing I could have ever prepared for. Not as a wife. Not as a woman. Not as a mother. Because when your world starts to collapse, it doesn't warn you. It just crumbles. Piece by piece. Until you're left with nothing but questions you're too afraid to answer. And answers that hurt more than the lies ever did. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Sophie texted me. Not Mark, me. "Hey love, I'm organizing a little dinner for the team this Friday. Would love for you and Mark to come. Just something chill, wine and laughs you in." There was something about the way she used the word love. Too warm. Too familiar. But again, I ignored the itch in my chest. I stared at the message for a while, wondering why she wanted me there. Was she trying to befriend me? Impress me? Or was she just trying to keep appearances neat and tidy? I replied, sure. Looking forward to it. Friday came faster than expected. I stood in front of my closet for nearly an hour. Nothing felt right. Everything I put on felt either too much or not enough. I finally settled on a simple black dress, something classic, something safe. We arrived a few minutes late. Sophie had reserved a private space at an upscale restaurant, low lighting, candles on every table, soft jazz playing in the background. The air smelled like money and aged wine. She greeted us at the door, dressed in a deep burgundy wrap dress that hugged her like a secret she wasn't ready to tell. Her hair fell in soft waves over one shoulder, and when she smiled at Mark, it wasn't the smile you give your coworker. It was the kind you save for someone who's already let you in. Look at you too, she beamed, looping her arm through mine casually, as if we were old friends. Power couple energy. I forced a smile. I told myself to breathe. There were 6 of us at the table: Sophie, Mark, myself, and 3 others from their department. But Sophie owned the space. She chose the wine, she ordered for the table, and she laughed louder than anyone else. Her voice was the melody the evening danced to. And Mark? He watched her like she was something rare, something bright. I tried not to notice how his eyes lingered a little too long when she reached for her glass, how he laughed in ways I hadn't heard in months. I tried to swallow my discomfort with every sip of wine, nodding along as they talked shop, exchanging inside jokes I was clearly outside of. At one point, the waiter leaned in to refill our glasses. Sophie leaned back, her hand brushing lightly against Mark's arm as she made a joke about long nights and longer deadlines. He chuckled, and she turned to me with that same too-sweet smile and said, "I feel like I know so much about you already." There it was. Not "we know so much about you." I do. The table went quiet for a second, just long enough for the tension to thicken. And then someone changed the subject, but my brain stayed locked on her words. How much did she know? Had he talked about me? About our life? About our problems? I looked at Mark, but he was already engaged in another conversation, eyes bright, fingers tapping lightly against his wine glass. I felt small, like a side character in a story that used to belong to me. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I smiled when I had to, laughed when it felt safe. I watched Sophie talk, move, charm everyone in that room, including my husband. She was magnetic. And I hated that I could feel it too. When dinner ended, she hugged us both goodbye. But the way she hugged Mark? It was longer, softer. She whispered something in his ear. I couldn't hear it. I didn't need to. In the car ride home, I stared out the window while Mark hummed along to the radio like nothing had happened. Like the entire night hadn't cracked open something inside of me. "That was fun, huh?" he said casually. I nodded, not trusting my voice to say what I really felt. That night I lay in bed, wide awake beside him as he drifted off like the world hadn't just shifted. I replayed her words over and over in my mind. I feel like I know so much about you already. What did she know? And more importantly, what had he given her to know? I stared up at the ceiling in the dark, listening to his even breathing, the rise and fall of a man who no longer noticed the war raging inside his wife. Something shifted that night. I just didn't realize how much. Not yet. But I would. Soon. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep. My body had rested, but my mind hadn't stopped spinning. Mark was still asleep beside me. Peaceful. Completely untouched by the thoughts that had kept me awake all night. I watched his chest rise and fall, the slight parting of his lips, the calm in his face. He looked like the man I married, but not like the man I knew anymore. I slid out of bed quietly, careful not to wake him, and padded down the hallway toward the kitchen. The kids wouldn't be up for another hour. I stood there in the quiet, letting the hum of the refrigerator fill the silence, staring at nothing in particular. And it hit me, how long it had been since someone really looked at me. Saw me. Mark used to look at me like I was a secret he couldn't wait to unwrap. Like I was the center of his world. I still remember how he used to brush the hair out of my face just to kiss my forehead, how he used to find excuses to touch me even when he didn't need one. That version of him, that version of us, feels like a lifetime ago. Now, it's like I live with a stranger. A stranger I still make dinner for. A stranger I share a bed with. A stranger whose texts buzz at midnight. I tried to shake it off. Tried to tell myself I was being dramatic. "She's just a colleague," I whispered out loud, as if saying it would make it true. But the seed had been planted. The doubt. The unease. The quiet little storm growing louder inside me with every passing hour. I caught myself doing things I'd never done before. Like checking his phone. I'm not proud of it. One evening, he left it on the bathroom counter while he showered. I stared at it for 5 full minutes, heart pounding like it might leap from my chest. It wasn't even locked. He'd always said he had nothing to hide. And maybe he didn't. Or maybe he just knew I'd never look. But I did. I scrolled slowly. Messages. Emails. Nothing blatant. Nothing obvious. Sophie's name was there, sure, but the texts were tame. Work talk. A few emojis here and there. You crushed it today. Next round's on me. That one. The kiss emoji. I froze. It could have meant nothing. Could have been playful. Friendly. Or it could have meant everything. I closed the phone quickly, like it had burned me. What was I doing? I wasn't this woman. The snooping wife. The insecure, jealous type. That's never been me. Or, at least, it wasn't me. Until now. And then came the comparisons. God, I hate that I did this, but I couldn't stop. Sophie was lean, tall, put together. Her clothes always hugged her in all the right places. She spoke with confidence, moved with certainty. She didn't have kids tugging at her all day. She didn't have stretch marks or tired eyes or unshaved legs. She didn't have nights spent worrying about math homework or grocery budgets or remembering to book dentist appointments. She was free. And I was used up. That's how I felt. Used up, worn thin, and invisible. And the part that gutted me? I started to understand why he might be drawn to her. And that's when the guilt kicked in. Because what kind of wife thinks that? What kind of woman starts justifying her husband's attention toward another woman by blaming herself? I started asking myself questions I didn't want to answer. Am I not enough anymore? Did I stop trying? Is this my fault? I kept telling myself I was being paranoid. That it was all in my head. That I was reading into things because of my own insecurities. But deep down, I knew. You can feel when someone pulls away from you. Even when they don't say it out loud. Even when they sleep next to you every night. Even when they still kiss you on the cheek before leaving the house. Their absence echoes louder than any goodbye. I'd smile around the kids. I'd pack lunches, answer emails, keep the house running like clockwork. But inside, I was falling apart. Quietly. Silently. And that kind of hurt? It's the loneliest kind. I thought about talking to him. About just sitting him down and asking him straight up what was going on between him and Sophie. But I was scared. Scared of the answer. Scared of the denial. Scared of the lies that might follow. So instead, I just kept existing in this strange limbo, between suspicion and denial. Between the woman I used to be, and the one I was becoming. I remember standing in front of the mirror one night, long after everyone had gone to bed. I looked at myself. Really looked. At the fine lines around my eyes. The curve of my waist that had softened over the years. The sadness I couldn't seem to blink away. And I whispered to my reflection, "You're not crazy. You're not crazy." Because even if I couldn't prove it yet, something was happening. Something was wrong. But no one saw it. No one but me. And the worst part? I didn't know what to do about it. Because confronting the truth meant I'd have to face what I was most afraid of. That maybe I wasn't paranoid. Maybe. I was right. And that thought? That was enough to break me. After that dinner, everything started to change. And not in some dramatic, made-for-TV kind of way. No, it was slower. Subtler. Like the way the seasons shift, so gradually, you don't even realize the air's turned cold until you're already shivering. Mark started working late. A lot. At first, he had excuses. Always believable. Meetings that ran over. Last-minute calls. The kind of urgent deadlines that sounded perfectly normal when spoken out loud, but felt wrong. In my gut, I felt it. He'd come home distracted, barely looking at me. Dinner would be cold. The kids would already be in bed. I'd ask how his day went, and I'd get the same tired answer every time. Busy. Busy. That word started to feel like a wall between us. A wall I couldn't climb, no matter how hard I tried. And then Sophie started texting me. Again. Only this time, it wasn't about work dinners or friendly coffee invites. It was personal. "Hey lovely, you free this week? Would love to catch up, just us girls this time, coffee on me." She was so warm. So kind. Too kind. The kind of kind that made you feel like maybe you were being ridiculous for doubting her. I agreed to meet. I don't know why, maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I wanted to see her up close. Or maybe I just didn't want to feel like I was losing everything without at least trying to understand. We met at a quiet cafe. The kind with soft lighting, indie music humming in the background, and overpriced lattes served in mugs that look like flower pots. She hugged me the moment she saw me. Tight. Like we were long-lost sisters. "You look amazing," she said, her eyes scanning me like she was cataloging every inch of who I was. I gave her a tight smile, still unsure of what this really was. We sat, we ordered, and she launched into stories about work, mutual friends, some office gossip, everything but what I really wanted to talk about. And then, she said it. Out of nowhere. With that same soft smile and perfectly casual tone, she leaned in and said, "Your husband talks about you all the time. He really adores you." I froze. I didn't know what to say. I laughed, awkward, quiet. Tried to hide the chill crawling up my spine. She tilted her head, still smiling. "It's sweet, really. Not a lot of men speak that way about their wives after so many years." Her voice was smooth, gentle, too gentle. And the way she said adoration, it didn't sound like admiration. It sounded like something else. Like mockery wrapped in silk. My internal voice was screaming, "Is this some kind of game?" Was she reassuring me? Warning me? "Mark talks about you all the time." Did that mean he talked about me? Or that she asked about me? And why now? Why did it feel like this coffee wasn't for friendship, but for control? We finished the coffee. She hugged me again. Said we should do it more often. I walked out of that cafe more confused than when I went in. And then it happened. A few nights later, I was in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed. I reached for it, thinking maybe it was one of the kids' school updates or a spam email. But no, it was a message. From Sophie. "Wish I could have stayed longer today, smirking face. You're so good at hiding it, but I know you feel it too." My stomach dropped. I sat up in bed, hands trembling. Reread it 5 times. Wish I could have stayed longer. Hiding it. Feel it too. My mouth went dry. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I knew that text wasn't meant for me. That message was for him. I wanted to scream. Cry. Throw the phone across the room. Instead, I got up. Walked into the kitchen. Poured a glass of water I didn't drink. And waited. Waited for him to come home. He walked in around midnight. Keys jangling, face tired, no apology. I just stood there, holding the phone, holding the proof. He noticed my face before I even said a word. "What's wrong?" he asked, casually, like he didn't already know. I handed him the phone. His eyes scanned the screen. No shock. No panic. Just a quiet sigh. "She meant to send that to me," he said flatly, rubbing his temples. "It's just banter." Banter. That word hit me like a slap. "You flirt with your coworker and call it banter?" I asked, my voice trembling. "She flirts. That's just how she is. I don't engage. It's harmless." I stared at him, looking for guilt, for remorse, for anything. But all I saw was indifference. "She's just a friend," he added. "Don't blow this out of proportion." I walked away. Not because I agreed, but because if I stayed, I was going to break. The days that followed felt unreal. He carried on like nothing happened. Still working late. Still busy. Still distant. And I was a ghost in my own home. Until one night. 2:17 a.m. My phone rang. It was Sophie. I didn't answer at first. But she called again. And again. Until I picked up. Her voice was soft. Almost nervous. Almost guilty? "Hey," she whispered. "I think we need to talk." Woman to woman. And in that moment, everything inside me stopped. The clock on the wall. The breath in my lungs. The silence between us. What could she possibly have to say at 2 in the morning? And why did it sound like she was about to confess something I already knew? But I said nothing. I just listened. And waited. And wondered. What truth was she about to hand me? Because something told me it was going to hurt. Bad. It was a Thursday. Late afternoon. Overcast. That kind of gray sky that makes the whole world feel heavier somehow. Mark was out of town, some leadership retreat in another state. He'd left that morning, kissed me on the forehead like I was some distant aunt, and told me not to wait up for his calls because the signal up there would be spotty. Right. The kids were at school. The house was still. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak from the hallway. I was sitting on the couch with a mug of coffee I wasn't drinking, staring blankly at the TV playing some show I couldn't follow, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there she was. Sophie. Hair tied back this time. No makeup. Hoodie, leggings, no purse. Just her, standing there like she belonged. For a split second, I didn't say anything. I just stared. Her eyes were red, puffy. She looked like she'd been crying, or like she wanted to look like she'd been crying. I couldn't tell which. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. My stomach dropped. I should have said no. Should have closed the door. Should have protected myself from what was coming. But instead, I stepped aside and let her in. She walked past me like it was her house. Like she knew exactly where to go. She sat down on the couch, my couch, and folded her hands in her lap like this was some casual catch-up between girlfriends. I stood there for a moment, unsure whether to join her or throw her out. But then she looked up at me. And everything shifted. "I think I'm in love with your husband," she said. Just like that. No lead-in. No hesitation. Just the words. Heavy. Sharp. Final. I felt the air leave my lungs. My legs trembled, but I refused to sit. I couldn't. My brain was trying to catch up, trying to find a reason, any reason, why she would say that. A joke? A test? A breakdown? Rage. Fear. Humiliation. They all flooded in at once. My husband. My husband. I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back. To laugh. To say she didn't mean it. But she didn't. She just looked at me with this soft, almost pitying smile. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she continued, her voice cracking, "but the more we worked together, the more time we spent, it grew into something. Something. She called it something. I wanted to scream. Throw something. Demand answers. But I just stood there, frozen in place, my fingers curled into fists at my sides. She kept talking. "Mark's never said anything inappropriate," she added quickly, like that would make it better. "He's been respectful. But I can tell he feels it too." She was crying now. Or pretending to. I still couldn't tell. And I just thought, you should know. Woman to woman. That phrase again. Woman to woman. But then she said something that flipped the entire room upside down. She shifted closer on the couch. Looked up at me with glassy eyes. Reached out and placed her hand gently on my knee. And she said, "But maybe, this isn't just about him." There was a silence so thick it felt like the whole house was holding its breath. My mind couldn't process it at first. Was she saying what I thought she was saying? The hand on my knee. The look in her eyes. The slight curve of her lips. She was flirting. With me. I jerked back instinctively. My skin crawled where her hand had been. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped, louder than I expected. Her eyes didn't even flinch. "I'm just saying," she whispered. "Maybe we're both lonely." That's when I lost it. I stood up, fists clenched. My voice shaking with fury I didn't even know I had in me. "Get out," I said. She blinked, tilting her head like I was the crazy one. "Look, I'm not trying to hurt you," she said, still calm, like she had control of the situation. I said get out." I shouted, louder now. My voice cracked. My body trembled. She stood slowly, smoothing out her hoodie like she was brushing off the conversation, not the storm she'd just thrown into my living room. She walked to the door. Calm. Still composed. Like none of this rattled her. And then, just before she stepped outside, she turned to me, smiled, and said, "You'll understand eventually." Then she walked out. Like she owned the place. And I stood there shaking. Not just from anger, but from the realization that nothing in my life was safe anymore. Not my marriage. Not my home. Not even my own mind. Mark came home 2 days later. Suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, humming softly to himself as he walked through the door like it was just another Thursday. Like his world hadn't been shattered in his absence. Like mine hadn't already collapsed. "Hey, babe," he said, kissing me on the cheek like nothing had happened. And I just stood there, arms folded, lips tight, stomach coiled into knots. I was boiling on the inside, but I didn't want to explode. Not yet. I needed answers, not chaos. I needed truth. So I sat him down, told him everything. That Sophie had come over. That she confessed her feelings. That she said she was in love with him. I didn't even tell him the half of it, the hand on my knee, the twisted attempt to blur lines that shouldn't be blurred. I couldn't bring myself to say it. Not yet. I watched his face closely as I spoke. At first, confusion. Then, disbelief. And finally, something else. A flicker in his eyes. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It was something darker. Was it fear? Or guilt? He leaned back on the couch, shook his head, and exhaled hard. "She said that," he muttered. I nodded. He ran his hand through his hair. "Jesus, she's insane." "Insane?" I asked, my voice thin. "That's it? That's your response?" "She's unstable. She's been acting weird for weeks. I just didn't want to bring it up and cause drama at work." I stared at him, watching the way he carefully chose every word. The way he stuck to the narrative like it was rehearsed. "She must have misread things," he continued. Maybe I was too friendly. I don't know. But I swear, nothing happened. "I would never do that to you." His voice trembled, not enough to be obvious, but just enough to make me feel like he was still hiding something. And then came the silence. That long, heavy, airless silence that follows the kind of conversation you can't undo. He looked at me, waiting for my reply. But I didn't have one. Because even as I sat there listening to him deny everything, explain everything, rationalize everything, I didn't know what to believe anymore. There was a moment, a brief moment, where I almost felt sorry for him. Like maybe I was the one overreacting. Maybe Sophie was unstable. Maybe I was being paranoid, insecure, delusional. But then I remembered the way she looked at me. The way she said, "You'll understand eventually." And I realized something terrifying. I didn't know who was lying to me. Her? Him? Or me? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Mark, watching him drift off so easily, so comfortably. Like nothing had changed. Like we hadn't just torn our marriage wide open and stuffed the pieces back in the closet. And that's when the dreams started. Vivid, twisting, unsettling. Dreams where Sophie was in my kitchen, wearing my robe, cooking breakfast while Mark kissed her neck. Dreams where I'd walk into our bedroom and find them tangled together in our sheets, her eyes meeting mine with that same quiet smirk. Dreams where she'd whisper things in my ear, "You weren't enough. You never were." I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, disoriented. Every morning, the line between reality and imagination got blurrier. I started looking for signs, clues, proof that I wasn't crazy. And one day, I found it. I was organizing Mark's dresser, folding his t-shirts the way I always did. The second drawer stuck a little. It had been doing that for a while. But this time, when I forced it open just a bit more, I noticed something tucked in the back. A folded piece of paper. At first, I thought it was a receipt or some old work note. But when I opened it, my breath caught. It was a photo. A printed snapshot, like one from a disposable camera. Of Sophie, leaning against a hotel balcony railing, wearing a white bathrobe, her hair wet, barely smiling. There was no date, no caption, but it didn't need one. I dropped the photo. My hands shook so violently, I had to sit down. That was it. The lie was no longer a whisper in the dark, it was a scream. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't protecting me from Sophie. He was protecting himself. From the truth. From me. And the worst part? He probably still thought I'd believe him. Still thought I'd swallow his lies. But that photo? That changed everything. Because now, the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was real. It was tangible. And it was sitting in my hands. While he was upstairs. Sleeping soundly. Like a man with no secrets. I want to believe him. God, I want to believe him. I want to believe the man I married is still somewhere in there. That this was all just a misunderstanding. That Sophie was delusional. That she saw something that wasn't there. That he never acted on it. That the photo meant nothing. But I also want to believe me. I want to believe my own instincts, my gut, the part of me that's been quietly screaming for months. The part of me that noticed the late-night texts, the lingering glances, the laughter that stopped belonging to us and started belonging to them. But what if neither of us are innocent? That thought haunts me. Because the truth is, I stopped showing up in this marriage long before Sophie ever showed up at our front door. Not intentionally. Not maliciously. Just slowly. Life got busy. The kids needed me. Work drained me. And somewhere along the line, I stopped kissing him goodnight. He stopped holding my hand. We both stopped trying. So maybe Sophie wasn't the cause. Maybe she was just the symptom. A byproduct of two people who drifted so far apart, they didn't notice the space between them was wide enough for someone else to slip in. Or worse, maybe she was the mirror. A reflection of what I no longer was. Young, confident, desirable. I started therapy a few weeks after finding the photo. It was a small office downtown, nothing fancy. Neutral walls. A faint smell of eucalyptus in the air. My therapist was a woman in her early 50s. Soft-spoken, calm, kind in that way that doesn't feel performative. The kind of person who listens without blinking. And for the first few sessions, I couldn't stop crying. Not because of Mark. Not because of Sophie. But because I couldn't recognize myself anymore. I started journaling, too. Every morning. Just 5 minutes. Free writing. No judgment. No structure. Some days it was angry, pages filled with curse words and scratched-out sentences and raw, unfiltered rage. Other days it was quiet. Grieving. Mourning the life I thought I had. The marriage I thought I built. The woman I used to be. And that's the hardest part of all. I miss her. I miss me. The me who laughed without checking if he was looking. The me who felt beautiful without needing validation. The me who wasn't afraid of losing someone because she trusted she was worth staying for. Sophie didn't just steal my husband. She stole her. Or maybe she didn't steal anything at all. Maybe I let that version of me disappear. Piece by piece. Year after year. Until I became just a shadow in my own life. And now, here I am. Trying to piece it all back together. Trying to figure out what's salvageable. Is my marriage still worth fighting for? Is love something you rebuild from ashes? Or is it something you leave buried, out of mercy? Some nights I stare at Mark while he sleeps, and I wonder, does he miss me too? Or does he only miss the version of me that smiled through pain, cooked his dinners, kissed him goodbye, and never asked too many questions? I haven't confronted him about the photo. Not yet. Maybe I will. Or maybe I'm still trying to decide if I can handle the truth. Because if he admits it, if he confirms it, that means this story ends. And maybe a part of me is still hoping it can be rewritten. But deep down, I know. I know what the truth is. I've known for a while now. I just didn't want to name it. Didn't want to make it real. Because once you name the pain, you have to face it. And once you face it, you have to decide what to do with it. And I'm not there yet. Not completely. But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to find her. The woman I was. The woman I lost. The woman who deserves to be seen again. And I don't know if I'll ever find her fully. But I have to try. Because if I don't, then Sophie wins. And I won't let her have everything. Have you ever felt like your reality was being rewritten, right under your nose? Like every memory, every moment, every word suddenly feels different because now you know what was really going on behind the scenes? That's what this feels like. Like my whole life was edited in real time while I wasn't looking, and now I'm trying to figure out what was real and what was never mine to begin with. I need to ask you something. Do you think my husband was telling the truth? When he said Sophie was just being inappropriate. When he told me nothing ever happened. When he looked me in the eyes and swore there was nothing between them. Do you believe him? Because some days, I do. And some days I really, really don't. And what about Sophie? Would you have confronted her? Would you have let her in? Or walked away the moment she stepped too close? I go back and forth every day, wondering if I handled it right. Wondering if I missed my chance to ask the right questions before everything slipped away. I want to hear from you. Really. Not just as a viewer, but as someone who's walked through heartbreak, who's questioned everything, who's maybe been on either side of the betrayal. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories, your advice, your perspective. Because I'm still trying to piece together the truth. And honestly, I don't want to do it alone anymore. And if this story, if my voice, my pain, my journey has touched you in any way, please subscribe for more real, raw stories from the edge of trust and betrayal. This isn't just a channel. It's a space for people who've lived through things that no one talks about. Let's talk about it. Together. You know what I've learned? Betrayal doesn't always look like what you expect. Sometimes it's not the screaming matches or the lipstick on the collar. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it whispers in your ear. Sometimes it smiles across a dinner table. Sometimes it calls you late at night and says, "We need to talk." Woman to woman. That's how it begins. Not with an explosion, but with a seed. Planted quietly, gently, almost kindly. And before you know it, that seed has grown into something dark and twisted and painful. Something you can't unsee. I've learned that ignoring your intuition is a form of self-betrayal. That every time I brushed off that gut feeling, every time I told myself I was overthinking, it wasn't because I was wrong. It was because I was scared of being right. I let fear of the truth protect the lie. And in doing that, I lost pieces of myself I'm still trying to recover. So if you've ever been in my shoes, or if you ever find yourself in them, remember this. Never ignore your intuition. Never minimize what you feel just to make someone else comfortable. And never, never let anyone redefine your worth. Not even with a smile. Because love shouldn't leave you questioning your sanity. It shouldn't make you compete with someone who doesn't belong in your story. And if it does, that's not love. That's survival disguised as affection. And you deserve more. So much more. Some scars you can't see, but you feel them. Every time you close your eyes.